just a quick minute to join us and then we'll jump right in. We've got a hard stop by 11 o'clock today. I want to be really respectful of everyone's time. And just a reminder, as you're coming in, we are recording this for those who are unable to join us. So you'll be clicking a little notice there, probably twice. We're recording on Zoom, and then we've got an otter in as well. So thank you for that. You are welcome to turn your cameras on if you like. You're welcome to keep them off, whatever is going to feed you energy today. We're looking forward to building just a little bit of community for our time together. I see some familiar faces. And we'll give people a minute. Good morning, Mira. Good to see you. Excellent. So we'll let people join and then
you as well. Sorry, I was logged out.
Good to see everyone. And again, you're welcome to, as you're interested, turn on your cameras. We'll leave our mics off, however, and we'll chat about this. We're looking forward to a really good discussion with our two really smart guests, and looking forward to learning from them. So as you have questions, we can use the chat, or I invite you just to jump right in. Excellent. Perfect. All right. Well, why don't we jump in? People are going to join us as they can. As to say, we want to be really respectful of everyone's time. So I'll say officially good morning and thank you for joining us at the first Oak Tree Project Learning Lab, session number 1. We are so excited about this. Will's going to give us some background on how we got here and what we hope to accomplish. Everything, of course, in Oak Tree is in service to the good work that charities are doing in the community, and we are just grateful and excited and hopeful that these conversations can be adding some value into your good work. My name is Curt Hammond. I'm the president and service champion at 4 Simple Words, and we have the honor of hosting and facilitating the sessions. There are 3 sessions, today and then next Wednesday and the following Wednesday. And today's first session is around building resilient teams in the age of AI. And I think what we've heard in our Oak Tree feedback is that those are 2 challenges and opportunities that charities in Wellington, Guelph, and across the country, quite frankly, are facing. So we thought we'd draw on 2 really smart people and help us unpack that a little bit. And I want to remind us today that our goal for this is to perhaps plant this idea that as we think about our team's well-being and we think about adopting new technologies like AI, there's a lot of similarities in those 2 things. And in fact, we're going to be exploring how the same approach can maybe help us build more resilient teams and help us embrace new technologies like AI. And the other thing we really, really want to enforce, because we've heard this loud and clear, is this is starting from the work you're already doing. There'll be some ideas and suggestions today, but we really want to build on, and we know that your organizations are stretched to the absolute limit. And today is about building all the great things you're doing as opposed to introducing a bunch of new things. So I want to ground us in that. A reminder, we are recording the session for those who have signed up but are unable to join us. We'll be sending those links out after the 3rd session. And before I get to the agenda, I want to take a moment just to pause, and we'll do a territorial acknowledgement. And I invite us just to sit in this for a moment or two. It's really, these are, as you know, these are important conversations. And I think good grounding for our conversations, quite frankly, around what resilience and adapting new technologies look like. So I want to remind us that we're coming together today from across the province. Today, I'm standing on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee. And I want to remind us that no matter where we work, no matter where we live, no matter where we play, there were peoples, cultures, and traditions on these very lands long before we were. And these wise peoples did their best to help us steward our land, our water, and our air. Now, unfortunately, we have done a terrible job at listening to their wisdom, and our environment is now paying that price dearly. And worse than that, in fact, it's much worse than that, we have yet to fully acknowledge that our communities are literally built on top of theirs. And we can no longer turn away from the social, emotional, and economic damage that we have done to generations of families across this country. I myself am just coming to terms with the word settler, and boy, is it uncomfortable for me because I'm a good guy and I'm trying to do good things. And this word settler is stretching me to understand my role in writing relations with our Indigenous sisters and brothers. So I'm on a journey to learn some things. And the best way for me to learn things about Indigenous culture, listen to Indigenous voices. On the same journey, I've also come to realize there's some things I need to unlearn about Indigenous culture, thanks to our Ontario education system. Best way for me to do that, listen to Indigenous voices. I want to remind us that as we think about all the good work that your organizations do, the intent behind them, and this, the core premise that I think we're all here today around to be in service to others, those are values that started with Indigenous culture. And we now have the honor of holding those values for just a little while. And as we hand our families and our organizations and communities off to future leaders, it's up to us to remind them that they are part of this continuum of Indigenous values. So these are big conversations. They're important conversations. I invite us all to take some time to reflect on that. And here in Canada in particular, we have to remember that truth must come before reconciliation. Thanks for that. And in terms of our agenda today and how we're going to spend our time, I'm going to hand things over to Will McTaggart, who is founder of Oak Tree Project, and he's going to just give us the worldview from his lens. I'm then going to I'll introduce our speakers, and then we're going to hear from Jodi, we're going to hear from Kevin, and then we're just going to have a great conversation around the similarities and maybe differences in building teams of resilience and adapting new technology. So again, thank you all for being here. No matter how you've arrived, your presence is welcome, and we are grateful for your time. Will, over to you. Thank you for pulling us all together today, my friend.
Good morning, everybody. So great to talk to you this morning. Oak Tree is on its 10th iteration. It's hard to believe. It all started back in 2014 and been on quite a journey. We have really, heard a lot of stories over the years, because really Oak Tree at its roots is about storytelling and how important that is as we get our messages across in life and understand each other in life. So Oak Tree 10, we're going back to really our foundational goal, which is building stronger and more resilient organizations, to help those who need help in our local community. And so we just so appreciate the hard work that all of the charities in Guelph and Wellington are doing. And Oak Tree, we're just turning our lens on how supporting you guys, hearing your stories. And really, this morning, it's, I guess, helping by giving some tools maybe to help you guys get those stories out there and do the work that you do out there. It's the economic environment has been really tough this last year. I, in my day job, get to watch the markets move all over the place and try and make good decisions in that environment. But it's constantly challenging. And this, what we're hearing on the ground is that the tariff stuff has really made it difficult. So very excited to be working through the Oak Tree Project, and we're amazed at the response this year. We, for the first time, we've never had over 20 applications before, and we had 29 this year. And it's just, and 29 amazing applications. Our expert panel is working through them at the moment, and there'll be, some information back on that in the month of November. It'll be a little bit, we're giving them a little bit more work than they expected, but that's great. We're excited to see these applications and all the great ideas that the charities have brought forward, and looking forward to see where the panel lands on those things. So this morning's session, the Learning Lab, it's really about providing you guys some support, whether or not you applied to Oak Tree, and everybody is welcome to attend these sessions. And so we're looking forward to some really good conversations and storytelling, and just understanding all of this a little bit better. this is the first of 3 sessions, and there'll be 2 more in the following weeks. And we really look forward to hearing everything that Curt and his team of colleagues put together to talk to us about. So with that, I will turn it over to Curt and the rest of the group this morning. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Will. And thanks to Will for 10 years ago having the vision to start Oaktree. And he didn't mention this, just out of humility, but Oaktree's donated, I think it's over $350,000 to local charities over the past 10 years. So that's a testament to Will and his commitment to building better community. We're also, and as Will said, we're really excited about these sessions. These are new for us. I want to transition into our conversation with a poll. I'm going to share it here. Simple question. And want open, honest answers from you. The question is, what feels more overwhelming right now? Supporting my team's well-being, figuring out AI, or both equally? No right or wrong answers on this one, but let's just do a quick poll. I'll give you a quick second to respond to that, and then we'll debrief on that together. Give you another, I'm going to count to 5, 4, 3, 2, get in there. I know there's a couple of you that haven't voted yet. Want to hear your vote. 2.5, 1, half. All right, I'm going to close up there. And I'm going to share some results. So everyone can see the results, yes? Yes? Good, thank you. So either just turning off your mics or jumping into the chat. What are your reflections on what we're seeing here, on what feels more overwhelming? You've got 10% saying my team's well-being, 60% figuring out AI, and 30% saying both equally. Thoughts? Any quick thoughts or reflections? You can jump in with the chat and or just turning off your mic.
I can jump in.
Please.
Yeah, I think, well, I think I think a lot of us have been figuring out teams' well-being for a long time. So although it's something that we're kind of always have our attention to, the AI thing just feels like it came so fast and furious.
Right.
One day there was an AI and the next day there was AI. And what the heck are we supposed to do with it? So
yeah, brilliant. Okay.
That sort of informed. I think it's the speed and it's so much the unknown. Whereas the supporting our teams it's not easy, but we've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, nice. Well said. I see Will's knowledge. I see some nodding heads. Want to get to our speakers? Any other quick reflections on the
I have here? Another perspective too. I agree with you, Sarah, as well. But I also would add, in our case, we support folks with people with low literacy and low digital literacy. So we are not only trying to figure it out ourselves in terms of how to integrate it appropriately within our staff and in a way that's appropriate and useful and not going to be taking up too much time, but we're also navigating, trying to support learners who are prey to scams constantly, and we're supporting them through that, and we offer digital security workshops. And in fact, last year we created this series of literally we launched it in March. I think ChatGPT came out end of February or something, and we launched this in March, and honestly, half of it needed to be redone.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks later, or at least revised a little bit. Yeah.
100%.
Anyway.
100%, Mira. No, that's good insights.
Yeah.
And thank you for that. And thank you to Sarah. And thank you for participating in the poll. I want to stress there's no right or wrong, no good or bad, only different. Different is good here on these answers, right? And just a very quick reflection, then I'm going to introduce our speakers. Four simple words. We've been walking alongside organizations for 20 years now, thinking about cultural transition. And I just really want to plant the seed that as we think about team resilience and team wellness, and we think about adopting AI, there's a lot of parallels in how we can approach those conversations and the mutual benefits, right? Because when we support our team, when our teams are resilient, they're more open to adapting and looking at technology as amplification rather than enemy, right? And when our teams are open and using technology, ideally we're freeing up space from some of that medial work that takes up our time and energy and allows us to connect as humans more, either with one another or with our patients. So I want to plant the seed that there's a connection between the two. And we want to start exploring that today, and we'll have a deeper dive in our following 2 sessions. As my good friend Lakdeep reminds me in the work that we're doing around mattering and building cultures of mattering, you know, the key takeaway here for us is let's problematize systems, not people. Let's think about the systems that are creating these challenges, not the individuals in them, because the problem lies with the system, not the people. So with that, let's jump in and let's hear from 2 people way smarter than I am on this. And again, a reminder, we're going to hear from Jodi Lynn. She's going to have a quick about 10-minute chat for us. We're going to hear from Kevin, and then we're just all going to have a conversation around these two similar and perhaps related conversations. So let me introduce Jodi Lynn Morris, who is the lead from mental health services at Compass Community Services. Jodi, thanks so much for being here today. Jodi has her MSW and RSW, and she's a dedicated social worker specializing in trauma-informed care, clinical practice, and community wellness. She's passionate about empowering individuals and teams, fostering resilience, and advocating for compassion. I love this language, compassionate, client-centered approaches to mental health and well-being. I've had the chance to get to know Jodi preparing for today, and she's got lots of great things to share. So let's give a warm oak tree welcome to Jodi Lynn Morris. Thank you, Jodi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much,
welcome.
Curt. Thank you very much, Curt, for such a good introduction. I will disclose that ChatGPT did support the writing of that bio.
Excellent.
So it was a bit easier with that.
Let me pull up your slides here for you. There, can you see those?
Yes, I can see them.
All right, so I put the spotlight on Jodi Lynn, and you should be able to see her slides as well. So Jodi Lynn, over to you.
Thank you. So welcome. Like Curt said, my name's Jodi Lynn. I'm the lead for mental health services at Compass. And at the request of Oak Tree, I have put together this presentation. It's called Thriving Together, Tools for Workplace Wellness and Resilient Teams. It was nice to see that sort of in the poll that people maybe feel like they've got some education and some experience around managing and supporting their staff, which is great. I'm not looking necessarily to reinvent the wheel, but maybe just bring things into your foresight and just to remind you of a few things and sort of how to support staff. You can go to the next slide, please.
Yep.
Thank you. So again, I just sort of want to highlight that we all experience stress. Specifically, this presentation is about work. It is inevitable. There are deadlines. There are things that we want to accomplish and achieve. And so that pressure will mount, and so therefore stress will occur. So the purpose of the presentation is really to increase an understanding of workplace wellness, how to build team resilience, and then have some practical strategies to support mental health. I do declare my bias here that sort of I could spend a lot of time talking about practical strategies for mental health. So I have had to curb that in my presentation and make it a bit more equal. And as part of that, sort of in my presentation, I would encourage sort of reflection and sort of actually participating in some of the strategies that I will be reviewing. And so there will be time for that next week. I think it's important for there to have been an experiential component. If we're going to be suggesting or recommending these types of strategies to anyone, I think it's important to have your own experience in sort of doing those things. So next slide. So we define workplace wellness as sort of, it's an active pursuit of our physical, emotional, and mental health. And I italicized active pursuit because it is an action. So again, we need to be doing things in order to support sort of what would be deemed wellness in a workplace. That includes 3 areas, the 3 key areas. So there's psychological safety, and there is legislation that is active around this particular area in Ontario. And psychological safety, when you really look at it in a very finite way, is the ability to freely express your opinions at work without fear. And again, that is a key component to sort of workplace wellness, where staff can come and sort of share ideas or share what may seem out of the box, and it is received in a way that they feel supported and heard. The second key area is work-life integration. Oftentimes, this is sort of talked about as work-life balance. I don't particularly like the word balance. I prefer the word integration. To talk about balance sort of seems to feel like it needs to be 50-50. It needs to sort of be on an even keel. I don't know if that's always realistic. I think there are times when work might outbalance sort of our personal life, or vice versa, where personal life may outbalance work. And so how do you integrate that? How do you look at supporting the well-being of someone, encouraging productivity and their satisfaction in the work? And so what does that look like? And how do you integrate that in a way that is supportive of their wellness? And then the third component is emotional and physical health. And this is really about awareness and sort of being aware of your physical and your mental, emotional health. And then what are we doing about it? So there's that word again about action, right? What are we doing? And we'll review sort of some of, again, if you're eating a certain way and supporting your health in that way, that's a doing, right? If you're getting a certain number of hours of sleep, that's a doing. So again, I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel. I'm just looking to sort of what are we currently doing and where is there an opportunity to create some change. So the next step is sort of to review what stress is and its impacts. And the definition that I found of stress was sort of stress arises when the demand outweighs control. So when we have lots of projects on the go and time is finite, out of control. Right. And we feel sort of that we are tied, and we have to do things like prioritize, and we have to do things like maybe something has to be put off to the side of our desk that we feel, doesn't necessarily need to be there or should not be there very long. So again, I'm sure you're all aware, but there are some common stressors that happen. So that can be workload. It can be time pressures, as I've previously mentioned. It can be isolation, conflict, or a lack of recognition. And sort of the effects of stress, and I've not listed very many, but the list is quite long. Headaches, fatigue, poor concentration, anxiety, withdrawal. We sometimes see absenteeism, or we see work sort of that's not being completed, productivity going down, and so on. And so there is a risk of burnout. Staff can feel, and burnout is sort of that last stage. You can start to see fatigue. You might see moral injury at times, when stress is sort of ongoing and chronic and remains unaddressed. And so again, we'll talk about sort of how to manage that. So it's this concept with team resilience around, it's bouncing forward. It's a concept that sort of I borrowed from sort of someone who's had a traumatic incident, and we look at sort of how they move forward and sort of what the learning is from it, and not necessarily once they're in recovery. And so again, we want our teams to be resilient. And what does that mean? It means the ability to adapt, recover from anything that may have been challenging, and to grow stronger as a result of those challenges. Challenges are often seen seen as very negative. They're difficult. They can be stressful. And they also provide an opportunity when you sit back and reflect on, what did we learn? How did we grow? Have I learned a new skill? And so on. And so we want to sort of look at that. Building resilience, sorry, not resistance. Yikes, that was a slip. Really involves sort of this capacity, clarity, and connection piece. And so how does the team do those things? And we'll be looking at those three things more in depth next week. Key components, again, is sort of looking at team resilience, is making sure that you have a shared purpose and value. I don't doubt that if you have staff working for your organizations, that there is a shared value. They probably would not be working for your organization if they didn't share that sort of value of what you're endeavoring to sort of support and change in the community. There's psychological safety popping up again. And so again, that ability to speak forward and sort of not fear sort of any of the reaction. Strong communication within the team is a component that is very important. Adaptability again, and then that mutual support piece and what that looks like. So we'll go into that a bit more.
Excellent. About 2 minutes left, Jodi, if that's okay.
Yep.
Super. Thank you.
These are just some statistics on sort of mental health in the workplace and in general. So again, I'll go more into that next week as well. I think the big piece is that the return on investment in sort of looking at mental health does come back and is really quite important. Go ahead, Curt.
Thanks.
We will be also looking at practical strategies. I've put them here. I'm not going to go into them, but these are sort of the top 5, as it were. There's lots, but these will be the ones that we will be focusing on next week, and I'll even narrow that down next week to sort of my top 2 or 3.
Excellent.
So again, I'm just going to encourage everyone to consider, rather than looking at challenges, we're going to start to shift the language and make some differentials around what is the opportunity, right? And where could there be opportunity? And to see it both reflectively from when you've been through a challenge, but also as you face a challenge. So again, what is the opportunity? We're going to look at expanding the strategies within the workplace, both individually and as an organization. What can you do? And then I'm going to challenge you to choose a strategy to integrate into your own work and personal life. You may be doing something, and I'm going to encourage you to sort of maybe take it one step further. Wellness is a shared responsibility. So if we're role modeling, that would be a key component as well for the team. Thanks. That's it.
Awesome. And thanks, Jodi. I love this bouncing forward. That's a new concept for me. I'm consider that stolen. I love it. That's super smart. What a neat way to frame that up. Thank you so much, Jodi Lynn. I really appreciate that. Write down your questions, grab your insights. We're going to hear from Kevin, and then we're going to spend the rest of our time unpacking these 2 smart conversations together. So as we're listening to Kevin, I invite you to write down some of your questions and or throw them into the chat. Let me formally introduce Kevin Matsui, who is Managing Director at Care AI at the University of Guelph. I've had the pleasure of connecting with Kevin a couple of times, and he knows his stuff here. I'm really looking forward to learning with him today. So Kevin leads the efforts to grow the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning community on campus at the University of Guelph. Now, Kevin has spent many years in the tech and software industry in a variety of management roles, including consulting, technical support, and training. And he has an educational background in engineering and business. And my reflection is that Kevin's really approaching the technology with a people lens, which is very similar to our approach at 4 Simple Words as well. So I'm really looking forward to hearing Kevin kind of ground us in this mythical, magical thing called AI and how we could maybe start using that in our organization. So Kevin, thanks so much for being with us today. Let's give Kevin a warm oak tree welcome. Round of applause for Kevin. Yay. Excellent. Kevin, over to you. Thanks for sharing your knowledge today.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Curt. Very happy to be here, and I'll go through this information fairly quickly, and hopefully we can just talk about it a little bit. So I think one of the main points about AI is that people often think it was invented in November of 2022, but really it goes back to the 1950s. And even the technology that people are most excited about is fundamentally been around for almost 15 years. So it has existed for a while, but it's really the idea of conscious interaction is what's changed in the last few years. So even if you think of sort of the economic impact of AI, it's really the generative AI. So this is the ChatGPT, the Gemini, Copilot, Claude, all these sort of tools that you hear about. That's really only a fraction. It's really about, I would say, somewhere between, I don't know, like if you think roughly 20% of the AI activity globally, even if you sort of assume that these numbers are a bit inflated because they come from McKinsey, who's a consulting firm who wants to sort of hype things up. But if you think of the ratios as being roughly accurate, a lot of the AI activity you don't actually see. It's under the hood, it's behind the scenes. It's when you buy something from Amazon or you have a song recommended by Spotify. This is all AI technology that's sort of operating under the hood. So I think, we talk generative AI and what are the motivations for general use? And I really think it's in many contexts, it's, conserving your creative or mental energy for more important tasks. Like nobody really wants to be what I describe as the world's greatest meeting minute taker, things like that, right? Like you want to offload these type of tasks. Speed allows you to do things quickly, and the idea of not getting stuck, right? Like or even to do things that might otherwise be hard to do quickly, like whether it's beyond somebody's skill set in terms of maybe they have limited skills within Excel or other types of tools. These are the kind of things that you can kind of essentially automate. So if you're thinking about scaling or use cases, so I kind of look at it metaphorically as if you think of ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or Google Gemini or Anthropic's Claude, these are like power tools, right? Like they're improving your individual productivity. Ultimately, as an organization, you're going to need to sort of automate these things and use what are called agents and custom chatbots and things like that to really scale them out or get a more significant benefit beyond individual productivity. But individual productivity is certainly important. And if ultimately you can unlock your data and access that, that's going to be extremely valuable to you as well, ultimately. So if you think of AI stressors, I think things that are sort of important on that front are it's things like AI tool selection. So what tools are you using and what do you need to be conscious of doing? So whether that's different settings like security settings or what shouldn't you put into the into ChatGPT, what's okay to put in. These are kind of the things where it's useful to have sort of guidance or policies because people often confuse what's the difference between paid versions, enterprise versions, and free versions of these different tools. And they sometimes people think their data is safe or things like that, but it's actually being shared. So, there's a level of security that you want to do and be aware of. Other things that help organization is, when to use and not to use AI, not just from a technical perspective, but from an authenticity perspective. Like if you're doing something, if you want to lend a voice to something that is, is a very sensitive topic or very important to your organization, whether the AI could do it and not be detected, you might not want to do it just from the authenticity of the voice that you want to employ. And then, there are other cases where, there are other implications of what you're doing. Maybe there's issues of, how AI was developed or things like that. So, you have to determine what policies or what limits you want to put on it as an organization. But these are all sort of helpful to sort of identify because these are things that make it more stressful for people to use when they're uncertain, when they don't know what they should do. So policies, we talk about shadow AI and shadow IT. And what this means is people bringing their own devices to work and let's say using ChatGPT on their phone or something like that, which is not really sanctioned necessarily by your organization. So these are the kind of things you need to be concerned about. Data privacy in terms of personally identifiable information and security, who has access to what and what information people are putting into it. And then I think another important aspect that people are certainly concerned about is all the elements of AI ethics, in terms of sustainability, bias, transparency. So things like energy use, these are all legitimate concerns on that. So it's best to frame these as well so that people have an understanding of those impacts. So they are, not using AI frivolously, but using it beneficially. So those are some of the things that I think are helpful from a de-stressing standpoint by having some clear indicators of what you're doing. But many companies, like I think a recent MIT study demonstrated that even like a lot of these big companies in the US, 95% of the AI pilots had failed, right? So that's not a high success rate kind of thing, right? So I think one needs to be cautious and really think about what you want to do. I have some other examples, but I don't maybe talk about just one thing about maybe your AI strategy fitting your goal, and then also maybe the idea of you want to think of AI as a solution, but you don't want to be a solution looking for a problem, right? Like you want to identify what's really important to your organization, what processes you have, and then really look at AI as being a potential solution to those problems, not going around looking, okay, we've got AI, now we can solve all these problems, but we don't know what the problems are. So I think everybody really knows their organizations well. That's the thing I think I recommend focusing on. So lots of different things, making sure your strategy fits your service model, and that's about it. So anyways, my email's there. Feel free to reach out. Mention, where you met, just in the subject line or something like that, just so I immediately latch onto that. But happy to help people out, and with that. That's pretty much, that's the very abbreviated version of what I think some things to consider for today.
Some really great stuff in there, Kevin. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'm going to invite, I got a couple questions to get us going for Kevin and Jodi. I invite you to jump into the chat with your questions, or I'm going to find your beautiful faces again so I can see everybody, and then welcome you to just unmute as well and jump in. Kevin, do you mind stop sharing your screen?
I was just about to do that, yeah.
Super, thanks very much, my friend. Thank you. There we are, there I can see everybody. So Kevin and Jodi, thanks so much. What I'm hearing from both of you is that when we start thinking about our team wellness and how adapting new technologies, AI in particular, these are cultural conversations, are they not? Like we need to think about the cultures that we have around team well-being and adoption of new technologies. And I'm wondering, could you just reflect maybe on the presentations you've had and then pull on one another? Let's stretch test this together. Like, I think these conversations start at a cultural level, and then we get into the weeds on implementation and technology. Does that make sense? Does that kind of resonate with either one of you?
Yeah, I think it's important. Like, I think you're just like any technology or any process, you have to make sure you have alignment with the values of your organization. So I definitely think that's important. And the idea of considering, people's, wellness and their well-being overall is an important part of adoption as well.
Yeah,
Jodi?
I would agree that it is a cultural conversation, right? It's sort of what is the nature and the process in which things are accomplished in an organization. And again, that's communication and, being open, and again, not seeing it as, not seeing anything as necessary. It's an opportunity, right? Like, whereas I prefer that word over challenge. And so, yeah, it's about communication and sort of connecting and and I agree with Kevin that sort of it needs to align with kind of what the values of the organization are as well.
So building on that, and this is something we're exploring at Four Simple Words, as a mindset around mattering and a mindset around AI. Like, it really does start there for us as organizations. And I'm wondering, what are some ways we could be experimenting? Because a mindset allows us to, dip our toe in the water a little bit and say, I'm going to try this without necessarily reinventing anything. So I'm wondering, what are some practical, easy ways, and you both spoke to this a bit, but maybe a couple of examples on how we could be experimenting or stretching our mindsets around this idea of team wellness and AI? And is there any cross-pollination there? So how can we be stretching ourselves to think about just some places where we can be experimenting a little bit?
Well, I'm happy to sort of go first. I think that when you're looking at sort of workplace wellness and sort of team resilience, it's about connection and opportunities to connect, right? And so the pandemic did many things, one of which sort of has put a lot of us into this virtual world. So if you have an opportunity to connect in person, I do strongly encourage that. Or, I mean, next on my list would be virtually. But again, sort of having genuine conversation and connection with each other. And outside of the role of potentially sort of manager, staff, those components, because we're all human and we're all sort of getting through this day by day. And so that I think is really important around connection. I think the other piece is to be open to sort of new ideas and sort of what is possible. For example, today's presentation, I had to plug into ChatGPT to provide a summary from my larger presentation next week. It was a busy week last week. I did not have an opportunity. And so part of it is experimenting and being open with is what it generates back to me. Does it resonate? Is it real? Is it right? Is it correct? All of those pieces. And then it created speaker notes. Not that I use them, not that sort of, it was helpful. And I did review them. And I think that sort of organizationally, sort of being open to sort of exploring kind of what is possible, especially when we think of sort of Kevin's statement around, being genuine, being connected to the values and so on.
Excellent. I love that. Jodi, thanks. Kevin, you want to jump in on that one?
Well, I think, if you look at it from the standpoint of think of workloads or what's causing you stress, is it the volume of activity? So maybe you could target AI at, coming up with things that are dealing with things in a way that sort of knocks down your pile a little bit to free up a little bit of time. Maybe things that, so you keep things moving, right? Like just so you don't have the stress of things building up. Get things done quickly. You have some notes from a meeting, maybe let the AI, put that into some form that you can get out quickly so that get things off your plate, possibly scheduling or just different things that, if you look at your things that, in terms of priorities, that things that things that you could like to get off your plate, reduce your workload. Those are things that I think might help. So, instead of adding things to your think, oh, I could use a generative AI tool to generate pictures of something, right? Like, don't create work for yourself. Try and knock your workload down by using AI. Don't add things that maybe aren't adding value to the process. You could maybe do that once you've sort of got things under control, but really focus on maybe improving your productivity or reducing the things that maybe stress you before you add more AI into your process.
Yeah, so let's go a bit deeper on that, Kevin. And we got a question from Mira here in the chat. I think it's a good one, and I think it takes us to this. OMG, I don't know where to start, and I don't fully understand the risks. Right? Like it's a big, and I'm seeing some nodding heads there. So Mira, I'm going to just read your question out, and I'll start with Kevin, then Jodi, over to you, and then I welcome people to jump in on this. When talking about AI, the value of data and client privacy is essential to everybody. I don't feel I know enough about the hazards and risks to properly adapt the tools. And we hear this all the time from large and small enterprise, small clients and large enterprise. It's, like, what are the risks here? So Kevin, can you give us some tips or ideas on how we might, again, build some systems and process around understanding the risks, mitigating them to allow us to take full advantage of that?
Sure. I mean, I think if one adopts a cautious approach, I think that's sort of pragmatic, right? Because then you don't have to be as cognizant of if you're using an enterprise version, which provides more data protection and things like that. So let's say you're using the free version of ChatGPT. Just assume you're posting stuff on the internet, essentially, is what you're doing. So are you comfortable posting that information on the internet? If that's the case, if there's nothing really private or it's just sort of conceptual, doesn't really identify anybody specifically, then you could put that into let's say the free version of ChatGPT or Gemini, and so that's something to be conscious of. There are settings within these tools that allow you to sort of turn off the elements of your data being used for training, but there are some also lawsuits in the US. So if you assume that all your data is being stored, that's the other thing, right? So it's, even if you check like a temporary chat or things like that, your data is still being stored. It persists, right? So just assume that it's almost like posting something on the internet, or there's the element of a training data being exposed, your data being used for training. There's always the issue of a data breach as well, kind of thing. So I think if you think of it cautiously, and then depending on the tools you have, you can kind of ramp that up. But if you think about it, don't post anything, don't put anything in there that you would be concerned about exposing, is what I would say.
Yeah. Excellent. Jodi Lynn, just before you jump in, Mira, I saw you were raising your hand there. Did I misinterpret your question there, or did you want to jump in quickly?
No, I was also gonna add that if there was some kind of online training, that maybe free training that people know of, with regard to that question, to maybe share it in the chat that is reputable, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, we'll be touching a bit on this in our third session with my good friend and very smart colleague, Sean Yo. We're going to be talking about this plus AI mindset that we're thinking about, that builds on everything that Kevin's saying here, and then getting into that a bit. And we'll be exploring some other training possibilities there as well. So absolutely. So great question. Jodi, do you want to jump on this, either from that, again, and so important the work you do, privacy of client data. Do you want to jump in on this question around how we step into this and start adapting?
Yeah, so I mean, we're bound by many privacy and confidentiality rules in our work. And so we don't utilize any generative AI. There is, I mean, not at our organization, but there is sort of AI Scribe, that is coming along in our field, and sort of looking at how that, like Kevin was talking about, like that minute taker of sessions and so on. There is some concerns because, again, where are those recordings stored? What happens with them? Sort of where does that information go? So we're, again, sort of as a sector, I think we're trying to figure out sort of what are some of those ethics pieces as well as privacy pieces to that work, and to that added potential asset to the work, right? I mean, there's no question that the use of a scribe sort of, I know for me, it takes me about 20 to 25 minutes to write a note after a session. And so to get 20 minutes back in my day after every session would sort of be quite life-changing.
Right.
And so, but what does ethically, like, again, we would be back to sort of what are the privacy pieces? What are the ethics around that? I mean, clients need to be comfortable with it. And that's the other sort of aspect for us, is sort of as we move forward, are clients going to be okay with this? Are they going to be receptive? And how do we then sort of also manage their worries and fears? Because if they're worried about it, then we may not have access to it. Right. And so then we're back to 20 to 25 minute notes.
Right. Excellent observations. Questions from those of us listening in. Any questions or reflections you'd like to share on building teams of resilience, how we're adopting new technologies, and maybe the crossover between the two?
I'll start. My name's Anna Lee. I'm the executive director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Center Wellington. So thanks for having me today.
Oh,
one of the things that keep popping up in my head is boundaries, right? Boundaries for your team, boundaries around AI. How does that cross over? Yeah, it could be a very useful tool, but that's one of the things, sort of how do we integrate both of these things while still being ethically, using what we should be in the way that we're supposed to be. My daughter is a TA for a graduate program at the University of Montana for one of her professors, and she's gotten very adept at looking at student papers and saying, this was totally AI generated. So how do we make that crossover so that it's ethically, morally okay, and that we're still accomplishing what we need to accomplish, right?
Yeah. So I'll give Jodi Lynn and Kevin a quick minute to reflect on that question. That's the very cultural component to this, right? What is our culture and our relationship with this technology and how it's going to impact our team well-being? So how do we set those boundaries around data, around usage? The last thing we want is, to Kevin's language, is that shadow usage, right? And we don't want someone using their personal computer, emailing it to their phone, and then cutting and pasting it into our systems, right? So we need to shine a light on this and establish those boundaries. So I think it's a really good question, Annalie. Kevin and Jodi Lynn, do you want to jump in with
maybe
your reflections there?
There's a very specific name for what you're talking about in AI. We call that the alignment problem, and that's where you align your AI systems with your human values. And then you could argue it's the alignment problem in terms of deciding what human values you want to align it with as well. So that is something as an organization that where your values of the organization, because it's not just what you can do with AI, it's what you should do and what your organization believes should be done. And that could differ from organization to organization and situation to situation and even individual to individual. So it's good to create a framework around what, these are the kind of discussions you want to have to sort of establish what you want done as an organization, even beyond data privacy and the tools that you're using, conceptually or philosophically, what you want to do. So that's what we call the alignment problem, essentially.
Great. Jodi Lynn?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to sort of mental health and workplace wellness, I think there's lots that can be done that potentially sort of managers feel that sort of, if I don't talk about it, it'll just go away potentially. And so I would encourage having conversation and maybe changing language and sort of creating different ways of asking a question that sort of supports the boundary and yet also sort of supports staff as well. And so I think that there's, it almost sometimes feels like a fear. And I know I experienced that myself as sort of a supervisor is that, I don't want to ask, or what can I ask? And I think that by changing language or changing the way you come at something in an interaction can sort of support that.
Excellent. Does that help, Annalie?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. We plant another seed related to both of these, and then we'll have time for one more question. The gift of AI is my ability to ask better questions. Answers are finite, but with AI, I can really start asking different questions and probing things in different ways around boundaries, around privacy usage. I'll invite us to think about just the exponential possibilities of being able to ask questions and push back on those answers and continually ask and refine better questions. So again, building on what Kevin's talking about there around the alignment piece, the gift of AI isn't so much the answers, it's my ability to reimagine and ask different questions. So I want to plant that seed. And I think that relates to both how we build teams that are welcoming and focused on our well-being and how we adapt new technologies. Time for one more question from the floor. Anyone want to jump in with a comment or a reflection?
I think there's another question in the chat, I suppose, there.
Excellent. You're hired, Kevin. Thank you. Perfect. I didn't see that. Yes. Thank you. So Sarah's asking around the shadow AI. Yeah, it's a great conversation, and it's one we need to be aware of. I think the question, and maybe we'll start with you, Kevin, any suggestions for policy templates or guidance for this other than ChatGPT? Yeah, like around, again, that cultural framework. So Kevin, where would you point us, or what do you suggest as we start to think about building systems to empower rather than hold us back?
I think I just see it as a natural extension of your sort of acceptable use or your IT policies. That can be essentially the starting point, and you can add on from there. Because there are certain things that you permit to prevent, phishing attacks or other types of things to protect your data, protect your systems.
Yeah.
So that would be a starting point, and I would extend from there in terms of what you should do. There are different sort of things that, like, there are so many things that are dependent on the tools that you use. So you kind of have to customize it based on what tools you've selected, what security you should employ. But it's sort of a natural extension of what IT policies you have in place.
Are there any sort of like thought leaders or even associations that are weighing in on this in real time or creating briefing reports or just things like other than, because I was kind of kidding about ChatGPT, like maybe, but also like I want to know like who are considered the experts on this, especially at the rate that it might be changing, and what is considered, you know, what are the key things that you'd want to have in any policy related to AI? For example, the shadow AI concept. I mean, I can see it happening, but the term itself was new to me. So therefore that new concept that I may not have known about if I hadn't attended today. I'm curious, where would I learn about something like that, and be kind of understanding what the newest trends are in this area?
Yeah, sure. There's there's a bit of a shortage of time here, but there's a number, and I could share this with the group as well, like a number of resources that might be useful, and some general thoughts on security and what might be helpful starting points on that. But
yeah, that'd be great, Kevin, if you want to share that. And our commitment from Oak Tree and the Learning Lab is that we're going to take all 3 sessions. We're going to do a summary and send that to everyone along with links to the video. So if you've seen 1 or 3, you'll have that feedback. Kevin's going to get us some thoughts. We're also going to trip into this a little bit in our session 3 with Sean. Sean's got some really good insights. There's lots happening in the corporate world. Where you've challenged me today, Sarah, is could we find something similar for in a not-for-profit environment? I think that's really interesting. So thank you for that push. We'll see what we can do for session number 3. Speaking of which, and I want to be really respectful of our time, next week, I invite you to come back and spend a full hour with Jodi Lynn. We're going to take a deeper dive on her reflections around building resilience in our teams and thinking about what that culture looks like. The week after that, which is the 29th, we're going to have Sean Yo from our 4 Simple Words team stepping more into this AI conversation, thinking about a plus AI mindset. We'll introduce you to that. And then we're also going to have some practical tools and suggestions for how you can start experimenting with this in your workplace in safe and meaningful ways. So we're almost at our time. Let's give a round of applause to our 2 speakers. Thank you very much, Kevin and Jodi Lynn, for sharing your wisdom, as always. I want to extend that gratitude to Will for pulling us all together for these sessions, and then for the good work of Oak Tree. And on behalf of everyone from Oak Tree, let's leave you with this. Absolute gratitude and appreciation for the good work you are doing in your organizations. We hear and see and we don't understand because we're not as close to it as you are, but we know these are challenging times. And the goal of Oak Tree this year, to Will's point, was to support you in where you and your teams are at. And we're looking forward to going through those applications. And hopefully this training is a benefit as well. So this is going to be available to everyone after the 3rd session. And if you feel there's people in your world that would benefit, we would welcome you to share that. So with that, everyone, thank you very much for your time and insights. A pleasure. And look forward to seeing you next Wednesday, 10 o'clock. Have a deep dive with Jodi Lynn.